Hello, everyone, and thanks for attending today's webcast, Deep Dive, Topaz for Enterprise Data. Before we begin, we'd like to cover a few housekeeping items. For an optimal viewing experience, please ensure that you have checked system requirements along with bandwidth considerations. Webinars can be bandwidth intensive, so closing any unnecessary browser tabs will help conserve your bandwidth. At the bottom of your screen are multiple application widgets you can use. All the widgets are resizable and movable, so feel free to move them around to get the most out of your console space. You can expand your slide area or maximize it to full screen by clicking on the arrows in the top right corner of the slide area. Today's presentation consists of slides and a screen share. This webcast is using Media Stream for viewing, so upon rendering the video, your media player control will launch, at which time you will have the ability to customize your view settings. Please note, you may need to minimize the media player once the screen share is ended to resume viewing the slide presentation in the screen viewer. If you have any technical difficulties, please click on the help link located via the question mark widget at the bottom left of your screen, where you will find details about system requirements and frequently asked questions. If you experience a blank screen during the webcast, please try refreshing your browser or pressing F5. If you have any questions during the webcast, you can submit them through the Q&A widget. We'll try to answer these during the webcast, but if a more complete answer is needed, or if we run out of time, we will reach out directly. Also, notice the Learn More widget. Here, we've added links to a webcast replay where customer TCF Bank discusses how they use Topaz for enterprise data, a blog correlating with today's topic, a link to our next Did You Know webcast entitled Find and Fix Bugs Earlier with Topaz for Total Test, as well as a copy of today's slide presentation. Your feedback is also very important to us. So with that, we'd like to encourage everyone to fill out our survey before the end of today's presentation. And by submitting your response, you'll automatically be entered to win a $50 American Express gift card. There will be 3 lucky winners selected from today's survey. We are extremely pleased to have as our speakers today Compuware account consultant George Kachnowski and product manager Kevin Corbett. With that, I'd now like to welcome and hand things over to George.
Thank you, Janet. So today's agenda, we're going to cover a number of topics, but before we do that, I'd like to introduce myself a little bit. I'm George Kachnowski. I'm an account consultant for Compuware. My role is essentially to support assigned accounts, for me primarily in the northeast of North America, to make sure that they're trying to get the maximum value out of the Compuware tools that they have in place. I'm a short-term Compuware employee. I've been with Compuware for 37 years. I've been in IT since 1973. I've had all kinds of different roles, both on the mainframe side and on the distributed side in my long IT career. Project manager, COBOL developer, PL1 developer, CICS systems programmer, project manager, all kinds of different roles, QA analyst, testing analyst, hyperstation consultant, etc. So with that, I'm going to talk briefly about what we're going to cover today. We're going to go in briefly a little bit about Compuware's role in trying to mainstream the mainframe for modern application development. We're going to deep dive a little bit, that's a contradiction, into a Topaz for enterprise data, which is Compuware's modern GUI interface for managing and messing around with data, both not only in the mainframe environment, but in the distributed environment. Also, we're going to talk about the critical role of data in DevOps and in basically application development and testing processes in general. And then we're going to do Kevin Corbett, product owner, product manager for Topaz for Enterprise Data, will perform and conduct a demo of Topaz for Enterprise Data. So that's the gist of the conversation today. Next slide, please. So mainstreaming the mainframe. So Compuware has been involved over the last 4 or 5 years in really mainstreaming the mainframe for modern application development processes, DevOps and Agile. We've done a lot of work to build a modern user interface to those legacy mainframe technologies including the Compuware technology. So that IDE is branded as Topaz, and hopefully a lot of the folks on the conversation today know Topaz or have heard of Topaz. But it is essentially the glue for the DevOps process and is the interface to the mainframe for a lot of mainframe functionality, but also a lot of functionality specific to the Compuware tool suites like FileAid, Avondate, Expediter, Strobe, HyperStation, ISPW, Throughput Manager. We also made a conscious decision as an organization to kind of blend into modern DevOps practices as we see with our distributed IT cohorts across the enterprise. So instead of trying to recreate the wheel ourselves, we've made a lot of inroads to integrate with a number of integration partners so that DevOps processes that are in place on the distributed side can be easily replicated and duplicated with integrations through Topaz and through these other vendors on the mainframe side for things like continuous integration and continuous delivery. And Compuware has made extended strides, which we'll talk about in our next webcast, on building automation for unit testing in the mainframe, like a lot of our folks on the distributed side do today. So again, Compuware has done a lot of things to mainstream the mainframe to really make it easy for not only the current generation of developers that maintain and innovate on the mainframe, but also the next generation of developers that are coming along that need to understand those long-standing business-critical applications that have been around forever, but need ways to visualize and understand and quickly make changes to those applications, run them through the DevOps or development lifecycle, and get those through back into production with the appropriate quality, efficiency, and velocity. Next slide, please. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Kevin Corbett. Kevin will conduct most of the rest of the presentation today. So Kevin, it's all yours.
Thank you, George, and I want to thank everybody for joining us today. George said that this is a shallow deep dive. That's not a quote, but he's probably more accurate saying that because it's labeled deep dive, but to do a true deep dive into Topaz for enterprise data would take considerably more time than we have today. So it'll be, I think, a nice wetting of your palate of the features that are available and how they might be able to help you. As George gave a little background, I'll also do that. I've been with Compuware for over 22 years and in the industry for about 36. At Compuware, I started as a developer and worked my way up to the development manager for the file and data product line. And then a few years back, when we had a new CEO come in and take over, we kind of reorged ourselves, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to try product management. So here I am. I hope I'm doing a good enough job. First thing I'd like to do is talk a little bit about what is Topaz for enterprise data. And basically, it's a component within Topaz, as George had been discussing, that really brings a whole suite of development and testing tools to not only the developers, but testers, data architects, anyone who needs to do data. So that's discovery, visualization, and we say mainframe a lot because we are the mainframe partner for the next 50 years. But when I say mainframe, you're also going to hear me follow that by and non-mainframe because we're now talking about data. So I think that's an important thing for everyone to understand. This slide, I'm not going to talk about all of this, but basically what we're doing with Topaz for enterprise data is we're bringing together all of the components of the FileAid suite of products into one place, Topaz for enterprise data, so that you'll have all of the tools you need to do your job as a developer, a tester, a data architect, a data analyst, whatever that might be. Our whole goal is to make data simple. We think it needs to be that way in order to make you more efficient in your DevOps life cycles. I'm not going to read all of this. It's on there, but let's just leave it at simple data, making it simple. So what's the role of data in DevOps? There's really a lot of different aspects of data, as you all know. But we've talked a lot about DevOps over the last many quarters, focusing on managing application code and getting it out safely deployed and out to production and those kinds of things. But we need to look at how does data fit into that role. The applications in your enterprises really exist to process data. I mean, you've got end-to-end transactions that may begin on a mobile device and travel, through various servers and finally get to the mainframe to get to the data that they actually need and then go back. So we need data in order to do our testing. And our applications are becoming more and more complicated as we get into the digital age or continue to get into the digital age and make the mainframe more of the proper citizen as far as that's concerned. It's just another platform. We need to look at it that way. So our tools aim to really bring all those experiences into managing that data into a single, familiar, easy-to-use platform. And that's Topaz for Enterprise Data again. One of the other side goals is to assist in automated testing. Automated testing is an absolute must for a DevOps lifecycle to work appropriately and efficiently. We're going to get into a little more of the quality, velocity, efficiency in a second, but that testing and automation of the testing early in the development lifecycle is extremely important. And the velocity and quality kind of go hand in hand. I think we all know that we can make any process go faster, and we can develop code at the speed of light if we really wanted to. But I think probably most of us have experienced this. When I do that, generally my code quality suffers, and we get bugs, and we don't like bugs. So really we need to kind of make these things go in concert so that we can produce higher quality apps and allow our developers to move more quickly through the process. And by doing that, you need to have that good test data. Again, we're going to talk a lot about the need of the data for testing purposes. If you have that, then we can help improve both of those metrics. Efficiency, again, you need the right data, but efficiency is being able to have the data available to you when you need it. At what point in your development life cycle are you? If you're at the beginning, you need unit test data, which is generally a small subset of data specifically to meet the requirements of whatever your programming spec is. But as you move through your process, you need more functional testing, integration testing, and so on. So by providing that data and having it available for you to provision those test environments as you move along, improves your efficiency. Privacy is kind of an odd part on this slide, only in the sense that everybody needs to make sure that their customers' data or your data is protected when it goes into a testing environment. So we do have, as part of a total enterprise for total, sorry, I was going to say total test, for enterprise development, we have test data privacy. That's a data privacy manager that you define rules in that can be applied to all of your assets across the enterprise. And we're going to kind of show that during the demo, so I'm not going to get into that much. Now we're going to go back into, we're going to talk a little bit more about continuous testing. Many of our customers, over the years that we've been working with them, have basically proven and stated that the best source of test data is their production environment. It has basically all of the conditions that they need to test their applications to ensure they're performing properly, with the exception, of course, if they've got new conditions that they're developing. But so what we have always purported is that you want to go into your production environment. You need to understand the data. We have visualization tools that allow you to help understand that data. We have tools to help you understand where your sensitive data is. But basically, you define your process. You subset your data into what you think is acceptable from a testing. And this is generally done by a testing group, by the way. It's not normally done by an application developer. That data is then masked, so you mask names and phone numbers and Social Security and emails and all of that type of stuff to prevent the sensitive data from going into production. Once you've masked it, you jump over this bridge and you load it into a gold copy of test data. That becomes kind of the standard where the developers will actually pull the different types of data and subsets of the data they need for the various testing phases. So you've got unit testing, it's a small subset. By the way, kind of just a plug, from a unit testing perspective, you need that small subset of data once, because I'm sure you're also going to use Topaz for total test. So once you've run that total test and collected it the first time, it actually creates a stub. So we don't need live data again after that point for your unit testing. Enough about total test when we get back to enterprise data. So now you're going to create a subset of data for each of the phases of testing. That then becomes available to automatically provision that test environment at the beginning of each test cycle. And in the cycle, I'm going through these fast because really this is kind of background information. I think we all kind of know this, but in a development cycle, we have a lot of different phases. And during the early phases of development, we've got a lot of teams working, and Scrum teams perhaps working on building out the different components. They're continuously building, continuously testing. That testing, again, should be automated. And by using our tools, we can then help facilitate the automation of provisioning those test environments and moving it forward to your continuous integration section or phase. Excuse me. But then also when you get into your testing phases, once development has been completed, again, a lot of organizations have separate testing groups in addition to the Agile team. But again, you facilitate it so they can re-provision their environments each and every time they kick off their testing. Now, I'm going to go to a demo, so there's going to be a brief pause while I'm sharing. I'm trying to find the right thing to share here. Okay. Like it's coming. Thought it was coming.
Did you hit share?
I hit share. Coming? Okay, good. Okay. So we're good? Just waiting for verification that we can see. What you should be looking at is actually our Topaz workbench. I'm in a particular perspective that is evolving over time. Currently, it's called FileAid EX, but it is actually Topaz for enterprise data now. And what we've done is we're bringing in all of the different components from the various FileAid products, and we're going to be building this out over time. So what I wanted to show you first was kind of a simulation. It's not going to make a lot of sense in some ways because, as I said, you want to have a testing group prepare your test data by pulling it from production, privatizing, and then giving it to you in test. So what I'm going to show is kind of a hybrid between that. The first thing we want to do is we want to create, well, we're not going to create, I'm actually just going to open the one I already created, an extract. And this extract, trying to see what the view looks like there so I can see if I need to adjust my screen at all. Find an extract, we come in, we give it a name generally because we probably want to save it. It has some basic information about when it was created, where it's stored. We actually are creating the specification and storing it on my local repository on my laptop. And we have a driving table. This happens to be a SQL Server table. Excuse me. I've checked the Use Referential Integrity box. I'm going to go out and discover relationships. This is just going out to the catalog tables and coming back and saying, okay, we do have a number of objects that are related. So all these are related. We indicate the driving object. Tells me what the relationships are in case you really want to know. These check boxes on the left-hand side allows me to exclude a table if I didn't want to extract it for whatever reason. You can also visualize the extract. So it shows you the driving table and all of its related tables, showing you that the project source also has a cyclical relationship. We can elect to apply data privacy to this. In general, if you're pulling from the gold copy, that data is already privatized, so the typical developer probably wouldn't be doing the privacy. But in this example, I'm going to show it just because I don't know who the audience is as far as your roles are concerned. But if you were in a testing team, you'd be applying the data privacy pulling out of production. If you weren't, you probably wouldn't come to this at all. And I'll show you what this is in a second. We have a project name and a repository name. This happens to be, IAF happens to be the other product owner, product manager for Topaz Enterprise Data. Her name is Irene Ford. She's not with us. So I'm going to be using some of her assets. And the project is just, and that's the name of the project. But that's important because I'm going to go show you that right now, actually, before we go any further. I need to change my perspective to data privacy. So here's the repository and the project that we were just looking at. I want to show you just a little bit about what it is. This has the first screen has some basic information about the project itself, what its ID is, what its description is, those types of things. Projects are actually made up of a number of different phases. So we've got the overview of what it is. One of the first things you need to do is define data elements. Data elements are those types of data that you need to privatize. And some of those are mandated by regulation, such as GDPR or HIPAA or whatever. Others may be sensitive because of your own business policies. So here I've just listed a few. We have a credit card number, employee number, first name, last name, Social Security. I'm going to focus in on the employee number for right now. In order for our dynamic data privacy to work, you need to define source data identifiers. Data identifiers can be fully qualified field or column names, or they can be wildcarded. So that you can find, if you know that EMPNO is in every single data element that you want to describe, you could actually wildcard that to say asterisk EMPNO asterisk, and it would find any occurrence of that. We have rules. And I'll focus on the employee number. In this particular case, for any time we hit an instance of employee number identified by the data identifier, we're going to do the encrypt employee number logic. And basically that's just going to do an encryption based on a key, which you can either have a managed key, which is administered by the data privacy administrator, or depending on the implementation, you can enter your own value. And we're going to act on the employee number, which is good because that's what we selected. We have coverage reporting. I'm not going to go into that, and there are different capabilities. Composites allow you to identify a name or a social security number, for example, or maybe it's an email within a free text field. So you might have a description or a comment or something to that effect. It's a large field with no structure to it. This allows us to go out and identify that field and then privatize it. So if it was in the case of the last name, if we privatize it, if it was Kevin Corbett and I turned him into John Doe, then even in the text of the body, it would be John Doe. So it's very powerful. I'm not going to demonstrate that today. Now I'm going to flip back over to my extract request. A couple of other things we can do here. I didn't mention this. We can have the ability to, as I mentioned, you want to subset your data. So you can apply different criteria or selection criteria to your extract. So what I've done is I've just selected some existing selection criteria. I need to switch views again, sorry. And basically all that is, I'll open it up and show you, is simply a condition that says I want to get all of the employees that are in work department A00. So that's what my criteria is. And basically I'm ready to go ahead and execute this. You could have supplied a key file that would drive the extract, and there are other options to control the maximum number of rows and those types of things. I'm not going to set those, but I am going to just click the execute. I'm going to resize my screen a second here. Down here in the bottom, you'll notice it says we're processing. It's actually going out, giving me a summary of what's going to happen, and then boom, we're done. Obviously, it was a small amount of data. I wouldn't want to do this on a large one. So again, the processing reports, they give you a little bit of a status report, the runtime status, tells you what the RI was. It gives you a little more information about the selection criteria so you know what was used. That can be obviously very complicated if you want it to be. I don't like to do complicated things during a demo. This is a live demo, by the way. And then it gives you the extract report itself that says we extracted, basically from the driving object, we extracted 5 rows. And then all of the rest of these are related. And then we extracted additional rows because of other related information. We move into a privacy report, and I focused on the employee number in the rules because that's what we disguised here. That's all I had set up. So it found an employee number. There were 5 of them written. 5 of them were changed. We also had the name rule, which was applied. Employee number and name rule applied down here. So it shows you there were 43 records written, 43 records were changed. So it gives you an idea that your disguise was probably successful. Obviously, if changed was different than the number written, you'd want to investigate why that happened. There could be a number of reasons for it. So that was the extract. I'm going to reset myself here. Now the next thing you'd obviously want to do is probably load this someplace. So I have a related load, which will look very similar to the related extract as far as the screens are concerned, where I name it. Again, I want to save it. If you save them off, then obviously they're repeatable. You can re-execute these, and that can be used for provisioning your environments and so on. First thing you do is you identify the extract source. In this case, the extract file with the emp source, which is what I extracted from the previous example. And then you identify the target. In this case, we're going to a different, it looks the same, but we went from a DPR GA, we're now going to a DPR trunk to kind of simulate going to a test environment. Shows you the objects that are going to be loaded. In this case, the schema is guessed. Tells you the table names and what the source was. If I wanted to, I can click and I can change the schema. And what happens when you do that is it says, oh, well, some of these tables don't exist in the target, so they're going to be created if we want to do that. Excuse me, we also generate the DDL to create these tables. I'm going to change it back to guest because that's just where I want to go. And now once again you see that they all exist. Field mappings is a pretty powerful aspect of a load. You can actually map the field. So if your target is maybe a somewhat different structure, has different column names or whatever, you can map the source to the target. But you can also apply expressions. In this particular case, for the last name, for no good business reason, I want to make sure that all of my last names are uppercased. So I simply added an expression to say uppercase the source field of msource last name, and that's it. So when we actually execute, it's going to uppercase that, and then I'll show you the result. Have another options tab so that you can also customize your commit ratio and all that kind of good thing, and various other optional settings. When you're all set to do it, you simply run it. Running longer than it normally does. Live demo. Well, that's all right. It's a live demo. For the sake of time, I'm going to view logs, which will give me all the logs. And since this one is running right now, I'm going to actually come back to this guy. This is a load that I did earlier this morning, just to make sure everything was working. And it tells you what it did. It replaced 1 row in the account, 4 in the department, 5 in the EMP, and so on and so forth. So we know that it worked. I can now switch back to my Host Explorer view. I can come to this guest EMP source table. We're going to edit that. Well, actually, I guess we'll edit it. Why not? I can turn audit trail on if I so desired. That's also a preference that can be forced on. So now you can see in the table we've loaded, and anybody who was in the department A00 now has a capitalized last name, and it's also different than the source was because we've encrypted the employee number and the last name. Well, the last name was translated. We didn't encrypt that. Another possible use case that once you've loaded your test, maybe you're developing some new aspect where you need to create new data. While I'm in this table, I want to repeat a row. Just one. I want to change its key. I want to put them in department Z99. I've got some special processing that we're going to be doing, and want to make sure we can get them get their proper data. I do that. Click Save. Oh, notice I have an X there. It's telling me something. Oh, I can't insert it because of the foreign key constraint. Z99 doesn't exist in the department table. So what I can do, I can simply edit the department table. I'll repeat this row as well. Z99, I'm not going to change any other information. We'll save that data. I should be able to go back over here and try my update again. And now it was successful. So that's just a kind of an example of how once you've loaded your test environment, you can modify your data to conform to specific needs for the piece of work you're doing. The nice thing about the editor, they're just showing you that's SQL Server, but we have the ability to enter or edit, not enter, and enter too, a variety of types of data. Here I'm connected to DB2 on ZOS. I'm just going to go ahead and I'll either edit or browse. I'm just going to show you that they're basically the same editors. I'm going to run that, pull it up. There's our data. Looks very much like the other edit sessions we had open. If you have IMS data, you can edit. Oops, didn't want that one. It'll work, but I don't want that one. Do P-order. Again, it comes up, you have this basic request is the same for all, obviously tailored for the type of data structures that you're going after. Go in, now you're editing the IMS database. If you want to see this in an unformatted mode so that you can see a variety of segments and sequence, you can do that. You can tell the dots here represent non-displayable data. We have the ability to turn on your 3-line hex, and now you can edit that data in hex or in the character row. Another feature we have when editing IMS databases is IMS databases can be somewhat complicated with different logical relationships and things. So we have the ability to visualize the IMS database relationship. So you see the different segments within the database as well as a logical child in a separate database. Nice feature. We can also do the same thing with MVS files. I'm going to take a VSAM file, and we're going to go ahead and open that up as well. And here it's asking, I say I want to use a record layout, so we have to specify what record layout we want to use. We could also specify an XREF, which is a cross-reference. If this was a file that contained multiple record layouts based on some value such as work orders or things such as that, you could specify an XREF, or if it was a segmented record, the same thing. This is a simple layout, so I'm just going to run it with the employee. And again, you have the same look and feel. Going on one more step to show you we have it completely covered. You can also go, I need to move this so I can read it a little better, over to ZOS Unix and edit files that are there as well. This time I'm going to right-click, and I'm going to say open with the data editor. If you know that the data is in ASCII, you can ask to process the ASCII data. In this case, mine's in EBCDIC, so we're not going to do that. It happens to be formatted, so I'm going to say use a record layout. Choose the same employee. So if you haven't guessed, it's the same file. And opens up. So now we've got SQL Server editing going on, DB2 on ZOS, IMS on MVS, and so on and so forth. We've got a Unix file and a DSAM file. Any MVS file type is basically handled through our editors. That takes care of my editing part of the demo. The other, I'm going to close off some of these. I hope nobody minds. Just to get my real estate back. The nice thing about these windows that I have open, there's a nice thing, and I can't demonstrate it on here because I have a single monitor. But if you have like a couple of different edit sessions open and you want to be able to see them side by side, these tabs are kind of independent. You just grab the tab and draw it to, if you have multiple monitors, drag it to another monitor, and away you go. It's just a really nice feature. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to actually compare two different files. So I'm going to, let's see, which one do I want here? To take the employee VSAM file, I'm going to compare it using FileAid. Browse. I want to change my configuration because I want to change where I'm comparing to. I'm going to compare this to a data set excuse me, that's in our production environment. something I haven't shown you, but when you go into a different host or a different LPAR, it does ask, or SQL Server or anything else, it does ask you to log in. Everybody close your eyes while I type my password. There's the file that I want to compare to. I click OK. Comes back. Again, I want to do a formatted. I'm being told it's a little slow, but that's okay. We're going to be fine. Being asked to log in again because this happens to be on a different port. I'm going to use the same employee master file. I'm going to click run. What's happening is we're actually comparing two files on separate LPARs. They are not shared, but we connect to both of them using your credentials, so it's secure. And the data that transports back and forth for the actual compare is encrypted, so you have no risk of data exposure. And then it comes back with a nice looking comparison summary. In this particular case, we compared 53 records from the old and 53 records from the new, and we had one difference. And the difference is one changed record. So I can either click on this blue bar, I can click on changed, number of ways, and it gives you the actual summary of what happened here, or the details of what happened. We had one record changed, and down here it gives you the actual differences in the two files. They're highlighted in yellow. So that's the compare feature. It's very nice. It allows you to do it either on the same LPAR, different file names, or across LPAR. Cross LPAR is concerned. We also have the ability to visualize different types of data. I'm going to close that off again. One of the things I want to do is I want to visualize a mainframe trace file. Mainframe trace file is when you run file 8RDX, it produces a trace file that provides a lot of information about your actual, wrong LPAR, hold on. I'm being tapped on the shoulder saying I'm running out of time, but we're gonna go through this anyway. So what this is showing, poorly because of my real estate, is the result of an actual extract. I'm moving around a little bit, it'll be a little bit easier to explain. So it tells you what objects were extracted. These boxes, if you hover over them, will tell you that you read 18 rows and you chased, and the number of chase keys you had was 22. So it gives you more information. In this particular case, there's not a problem, but there could have been. And this helps you identify maybe you have a relationship defined wrong, or maybe you've missed a relationship so you didn't get an object that you expected to get. So it helps you tune your extracts a little bit better. So it's a very nice thing. I have one more thing that I was going to go into, and I'll do it very, very quickly, I promise. Because I want to talk a little bit about our SQL editor within Topaz. SQL editor is basically the functional equivalent of Spoofy on the mainframe for DB2. It's a very nice feature. Allows you to fine-tune your SQL. Gives you a little bit of assist. Let's go after the order table. So it helps build the SQL to a certain extent. You run it, and it failed. Well, that's not good. Uppercase select. No. We'll do it in a live demo. All right, we're going to try it differently. We're going to go ahead and just create it this way. I want to use I think I had the creator actually wrong. We're actually going to build out a little bit more complicated statement. Again, using our FR-SAMP creator. And we'll go order table to order line. I'll try and make this bigger so it's more readable for everybody. The SQL Builder allows me to build 4 types of statements. In the scrapbook that I was just in, you can execute any SQL statement, whether it be DDL or drop, create, alter, insert, update, delete, you name it, you can do it. Within the SQL Query Builder itself, you can only do select, update, insert, and delete. We're going to do a select. These boxes representing the tables give you the column names, and so we can select which columns we actually want to have in our result set. Order description. And let's see, over here we'll take the order line number, the part number, and let's say their status. You can see it's building the SQL at the top and it's added all those columns. At the bottom, we can go down now and add conditions. I can say I want to do it where this order number equals, oops. And it's just built it out. And I hope this runs. It failed also. I think I've got a connection problem. But it gives you an idea of how easily you can build out your test results. Here's one from earlier. You can actually see, it brings back the results in this window down here. These are a limited number. You can control whether you get 1,000 or 10,000 or 10 or 20, whatever you want to do to give your results. So that's basically what I wanted to show. I'm not going to try and figure out why that's failing. I have a feeling I'm connected to a different subsystem than I was earlier. So we're going to let it go with that. And with that, George, I'm going to turn it over to you to summarize where we are. Oh, I need to stop my sharing. We should be back.
All right, thanks, Kevin. Go back here. So again, we briefly covered an overview of Topaz for enterprise data. We talked about Compuware's role in mainstreaming the mainframe. We did a quick overview of Topaz for enterprise data. We did a demonstration, obviously a very short demonstration in a, quote, deep dive of Topaz for enterprise data. On the slide here, which you'll get when the webcast is finished, are some references to additional information on Topaz for enterprise data. And certainly for existing Compuware customers or anybody that's interested in Topaz for enterprise data, contact your Compuware account team for a deeper dive demonstration for your own self. Or if you're interested in this as a new product into your environment, please contact Compuware. With that, I'm going to turn it back to Janet to do a wrap-up, and we'll try to answer some of the questions that have occurred.
Thanks, George. Thanks, Kevin. Again, we just want to please remind you to take the time to fill out our survey at the end of the webcast. Again, 3 $50 American Express gift cards will be issued to lucky winners, and we value your feedback. It helps in how we create our products for you use in the future. And with that, I'd like to take a few moments to have the team answer some questions.
So Kevin, one question that came across was, can Topaz for enterprise data visualize relationship files created by File8 RDX and or File8 for DB2?
Yes. As a matter of fact, that was the demonstration that I did. Was the first one, well, the extract results, or the trace file, is out of FileAid RDX. But you can also visualize a FileAid RDX request. So if you have a request that's been saved, you can point at that, and it'll come back and show you all the objects and the relationships and those types of things. So yes, you can.
Okay, thank you. So I got another question, and I think I can answer this one. Can I use selection criteria to limit the data I want to select? And I think Kevin showed that, and that applies to any data type that you're going after. So if you're looking at an MVS file and you want to subset the data, if you're looking at DB2 tables or IMS databases, you can provide selection criteria to subset the data. Similarly, if you're looking at data in Oracle or SQL Server, you can provide selection criteria at any point in time. I think that kind of covers all the questions that have come across, Janet. I know we've gone over our 30-minute time frame here, but with that, I think we're set to
for the questions that did come in that we didn't really have time to address, we'll definitely reach out to you directly. And again, we appreciate your time that you've taken to spend with us, and we hope it's been helpful. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out directly. And with that, have a great day.
Thanks, everybody.